The Supreme Court is set to decide the fate of the Trump-era tariffs, a move that could reshape American trade policy and presidential power. The case follows a lower court ruling questioning whether the administration overstepped by imposing tariffs without Congress's explicit approval. With global supply chains disrupted and international markets on edge, the stakes are high. Will the court unwind years of protectionism or cement a powerful tool for future presidents? The expedited hearing underscores the urgency, as every stakeholder, from factory workers to tech executives, awaits a decision that could redefine the balance of power in Washington. At its core, this is a test of who controls America's economic destiny, the president or Congress. To truly grasp the stakes of today's Supreme Court case, we need to rewind to a pivotal moment in recent American history, a time when the rules of global trade were dramatically rewritten almost overnight. It all began in 2018 when President Donald Trump, championing his America First agenda, announced sweeping tariffs on imported steel and aluminum. The administration argued these measures were necessary to protect national security and American jobs, but the real target was much broader. Chinese goods, which were accused of flooding U.S. markets and undermining domestic industries through unfair trade practices. The tariffs quickly escalated into a full-blown trade war. China and other major trading partners retaliated with their own tariffs on American products, from soybeans to automobiles, sparking a tit-for-tat battle that disrupted global supply chains and upended decades of free trade policy. Suddenly, American farmers found their crops facing steep tariffs overseas, while manufacturers struggled with rising costs for raw materials. The world watched as trade relationships frayed, long-standing alliances were tested, and global markets became more volatile. The uncertainty forced businesses to reconsider where and how they sourced materials, leading to a wave of supply chain reconfigurations. To justify these sweeping tariffs, the Trump administration invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, a law originally intended for national security emergencies. This unprecedented use of IEEPA is now at the heart of the Supreme Court case, raising questions about the limits of presidential power over trade. While some U.S. industries like steel saw a temporary boost, many more businesses and farmers suffered. Higher costs for imported goods squeezed profit margins, and lost export markets meant layoffs and closures in rural communities and small towns across the country. Companies scrambled to adapt, rethinking their entire supply chains. Some shifted production to other countries, while others invested in automation to cut costs. The ripple effects were felt in every corner of the economy. Ultimately, the tariffs didn't just impact businesses, they hit American families too. Prices for everyday goods rose, contributing to a new era of inflation and economic uncertainty. For many, the trade war became a daily reality at the checkout counter. This turbulent era of trade conflict and legal controversy set the stage for today's high-stakes legal showdown, where the Supreme Court will decide how much power a president truly has to reshape the global economy. This case is about more than just tariffs or trade disputes. At its core, it's a pivotal moment in American constitutional history, raising fundamental questions about how our government is structured and who truly holds the reins of power. It's about the separation of powers, the foundational principle that divides authority among the branches of government to prevent anyone from becoming too dominant. The Constitution clearly gives Congress the authority to levy taxes and regulate trade with foreign nations. This power is spelled out in Article 1, reflecting the founders' intent that the people's representatives should control the nation's economic policy. However, over the years, Congress has gradually delegated some of its powers to the president, especially in times of crisis or emergency. This was meant to allow swift action when the nation's security or economy was at risk, but it also blurred the lines between legislative and executive authority. The Trump administration argued that the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, gave the president sweeping authority to impose tariffs and take other economic actions without waiting for Congress. This interpretation allowed the executive branch to bypass the usual legislative process, raising alarms among many lawmakers and legal scholars. Critics contend that this is a dangerous overreach, transforming a law originally designed for rare foreign crises into a tool for making broad, unilateral changes to U.S. trade policy. They warn that such actions could set a precedent, allowing future presidents to sidestep Congress whenever they see fit. Now, the Supreme Court faces a crucial decision. Did Congress, by passing laws like IEPA, hand over too much of its constitutional authority? Or did the president exceed the limits of the power that Congress intended to delegate? The outcome of this case could permanently alter the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches, redefining how our government functions for generations to come. The stakes are high, not just for this president, but for all future presidents and Congresses. At issue is who will control America's economic destiny and how much unchecked power any one branch should have over the nation's policies and prosperity. Ultimately, this case is about the core principle of checks and balances, the idea that no branch of government should be able to act alone, and that each must respect the limits set by the Constitution to protect our democracy. The legal battle centers on IEPA, a law designed for national emergencies, not broad economic policy. Historically used for sanctions against hostile nations, IEPA was reinterpreted by the Trump administration to justify tariffs on major trading partners. Supporters say economic security is national security. Opponents warn this stretches the law beyond its intent. Critics argue the administration sidestepped established trade laws, exploiting a loophole to impose tariffs without proper oversight. The Supreme Court must decide if IEPA was meant to give presidents such sweeping power over trade. Their ruling will clarify the limits of emergency powers and set a precedent for future economic policy. The decision could redefine how America responds to global economic threats. The Trump tariffs created winners and losers across the economy. U.S. steel and aluminum producers saw a revival, but manufacturers relying on imports faced soaring costs and tough competition. Retaliatory tariffs from other countries hit American exporters, especially farmers, leading to falling prices and government bailouts. The trade war fueled uncertainty, chilling investment and slowing global growth. International institutions warned of long-term damage to the world economy. For many businesses, the unpredictability of trade rules made planning nearly impossible. The Supreme Court's decision will determine if this era of friction continues, or if stability returns to global trade. The world is watching for a signal on America's future economic direction. Beyond policy debates, tariffs hit everyday Americans. Consumers paid more for goods, with price hikes felt most by lower and middle-income families. Some workers in protected industries gained, but job losses elsewhere offset those gains as companies cut costs or closed. Small businesses lacking resources to adapt faced tough choices, some even shut down. The tariffs' unintended consequences rippled through communities, affecting jobs, budgets, and local economies. The Supreme Court's ruling will have real-life impacts, shaping the financial future of millions. This isn't just a legal battle, it's about the livelihoods of ordinary Americans. Experts are deeply divided as the Supreme Court takes up the case. Many legal scholars warn that letting presidents use IEPA for tariffs erodes Congress's constitutional role. Others argue the law's broad language gives the president needed flexibility, and Congress can always amend it. Economists mostly agree tariffs hurt more than help, raising prices and costing jobs, but some see them as a necessary shock to fix broken trade systems. Supporters say tariffs forced tough negotiations and highlighted unfair global practices. Critics point to disrupted supply chains and economic uncertainty. The debate is about more than economics, it's about the future of American power and policy. The court's decision will echo far beyond the courtroom. If the Supreme Court strikes down the tariffs, the government could owe hundreds of billions in refunds to importers. Processing these claims would be a massive administrative challenge, with years of records and disputes to resolve. For businesses, refunds could mean a financial lifeline after years of higher costs. But a sudden payout could disrupt the federal budget and even fuel inflation. The stakes are enormous, not just for trade policy but for government finances and the broader economy. The possibility of massive refunds adds urgency and complexity to the court's decision. This is more than a symbolic ruling. It could trigger one of the largest financial reversals in U.S. history. The Supreme Court's decision on the Trump tariffs will shape the future of American governance and global leadership. This landmark ruling will not only determine the extent of presidential authority, but also set a precedent for how future administrations might navigate the complex web of international trade. As the justices deliberate, the world watches with bated breath, understanding that the outcome could redefine the balance of power between the executive branch and Congress. It will clarify how much power the president has to act unilaterally in economic crises. This decision is crucial, as it will either reinforce or challenge the president's ability to impose tariffs without congressional approval. In times of economic uncertainty, the ability to act swiftly can be vital, but it also raises questions about checks and balances in a democratic system. The outcome will influence prices, jobs, and America's role in the world. American consumers and businesses alike are keenly aware that tariffs can lead to higher prices on everyday goods, affecting household budgets and business operations. Moreover, the decision will impact the competitiveness of American products on the global stage, potentially altering trade relationships and economic alliances. Allies and rivals alike are watching to see if the U.S. will act as a partner or go it alone. The international community is closely monitoring whether the U.S. will choose collaboration or isolation. This decision could either strengthen alliances or create rifts, influencing diplomatic relations and global economic policies. This is a pivotal moment for democracy, economic policy, and the balance of power. The decision will resonate beyond the courtroom, affecting voter sentiment and shaping future political campaigns. Economists and policymakers are already debating the potential long-term effects on the U.S. economy and its position as a global leader. The tariff saga is a lesson in the real-world impact of government decisions. It highlights how policy decisions made in Washington can ripple through the economy, affecting everyone from factory workers to small business owners. The headlines may focus on tariffs, but the underlying story is about the broader implications of governance and economic strategy. The next chapter will be written not just by the court, but by the nation as a whole. As citizens engage in discussions and debates, they contribute to the evolving narrative of American democracy. The collective voice of the people will play a crucial role in shaping the future direction of the country. The implications will be felt for years to come. This decision is not just about the present, it will have lasting effects on future generations. As the pages of history turn, the choices made today will echo in the economic and political landscapes of tomorrow, influencing how America navigates the challenges of a globalized world.